throughout this pandemic, we have seen our Prime Minister speak directly to Canadians about the pandemic and the public health measures that we all need to be taking. And I suspect that our Prime Minister will continue to do that tomorrow evening. Regarding particulars, I'm not quite sure, but I know that he is without question committed to working collaboratively with the provinces and territories to make sure that we as a collective group can make sure that we come through this pandemic together.
That's Minister of Public Services and Procurement Anita Anand explaining why Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, she says, will make a national address to Canadians tomorrow night at approximately 6:30 Eastern Time. The Prime Minister's office says he will, quote, address Canadians directly on the urgency of fighting COVID-19 as we face down the prospect of a second wave of the virus. This will come a couple of hours after Governor General Julie Payette delivers the government's Reset Throne speech. So what more does Justin Trudeau have to say to the nation, and what are the benefits or drawbacks of such an address? The Power Panel is here to answer those questions. Over in Toronto, Tim Murphy, Managing Director of Macmillan Vantage, joins us, as well as Shakir Chambers. He's a Senior Consultant at Navigator. Over in Gatineau, we did have Françoise Boivin, sorry, she just dropped away. Pandemic TV, good times. But we do have Marika Walsh of the Globe and Mail in Ottawa, and I'm sure Françoise will rejoin us as soon as the good old Skype connects again. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. Tim, I'm going to start with you on the question of what the purpose of tomorrow night's address will be. First of all, there's, in this little bubble that we call Ottawa, tons of rumors right now going around. Is it going to be something substantial? Will he be making, some very specific announcement? Or is it, as the PMO says, meant to address really the kind of second wave that we're all seeing in not all provinces, I should say, in many provinces?
Yeah, so it's going to be the latter. I think I think we are seeing a clear resurgence, as you note, in not all across the country, but in a significant number of especially population-dense centers across the country, at a level and at a pace that, if it keeps going, will push us way past where we were in the first wave. So I think, the notion of grabbing a national platform to kind of focus attention, the reality is, I'm sure you, like all of us, we kind of got a little, more relaxed in how we behaved in the context of it. Obviously, government's opened up to various phases, including almost all the way open, and we're seeing a boost in cases. But with a rate of growth and a baseline of cases that suggest maybe we're on the precipice of something much more dangerous. And I think in that context, a renewal of that, that national bully pulpit to say we need to take this seriously, we need to act, we need some measures to get this under control makes sense to me. And I think that's what the Prime Minister is trying to do. And I'm sure he will, try and kickstart that cooperative effort that the provinces and the federal government had through the first wave to get us, to get attention focused so we don't have a second wave worse than the first one.
Shakir, do you think the intent is that altruistic, or is there an opportunity here, given that it's the throne speech, the agenda, the kinds of things that Tim touched on will be addressed by the Governor General, but then, does this provide the Prime Minister basically with sort of unfettered time to do that as well?
There is no doubt this is just an opportunity for the Prime Minister to re-announce what's in the throne speech. Let's not forget here, the throne speech is going to be given by the Governor General, and it won't have the Prime Minister's face attached to it. If you're announcing billions of dollars in spending, if you're announcing new measures to get families through the worst of the pandemic, why wouldn't you want the Prime Minister's face attached to those announcements? I think that primetime announcement is going to talk about COVID. It's going to reiterate social distancing, wash your hands, follow health guidelines. But ultimately, what it is, the political opportunity for the Prime Minister to tie himself with a speech from the throne and put himself out there with all the clips that'll be playing over and over for weeks to come.
Françoise, is that smart strategy, I guess, taking away all partisanship, whether you think it's the right or wrong thing to do? Is it smart political strategy? And she's back now, I should say. Welcome.
Yeah, hey, welcome. Yes, it is a smart strategy. Actually, that's how I would have described it. It's that, a smart strategy. I see it more like damage control, and not toward COVID-19, but toward the prorogation and the expectations vis-a-vis the prorogation and that throne speech. And the fact that, except reading pretty much all the words we're used to read in a Liberal throne speech, which is seniors, kids, health, whatever words under the sun that they can put in the throne, speech will be there. At the same time, like Shakir was saying, it doesn't necessarily have the face of the Prime Minister. The address to the nation has been done and announced by the Indian Prime Minister Modi, the UK Prime Minister Johnson. So you look at that, and all our premiers are pretty visible have been pretty visible in the last few weeks. And I think at the same thing that happened during the pandemic, not necessarily at the start for the Prime Minister, he waited a bit, saw the big numbers from François Legault and joined in. And thank God, because we needed to hear what the federal were doing, and that thus started all the announcements. So I think he's going to try to fill in the void or the throne speech by looking like and saying to Canadians, we are here, and taking fellow Canadians, yourselves, very seriously, and what's happening with the second wave very seriously.
Marika, where does that leave the opposition? We know that two of the opposition leaders, Yves-François Blanchet as well as Aaron O'Toole, have been diagnosed as positive with COVID-19. If they wanted to respond, it's difficult to get a camera crew there, right? Even just like sheerly technically. And we're thinking of everyone who, of course, has been diagnosed. But it certainly is a complicated situation for the opposition.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say this really threw the opposition for a loop this afternoon, which, going to Francois's kind of debrief on the strategy for the PMO, it really does tick a lot of boxes. It averts attention from the Governor General, puts the Prime Minister front and center again, and it throws the opposition onto their heels. So I think the opposition, I just spoke with them maybe an hour ago to see what their plans were, and they're still trying to figure it out and trying to figure out what that means, because, as you said, Aaron O'Toole and Yves-François Blanchet, the two biggest opposition parties in the House, have leaders who are in isolation. And so I think how they navigate this and what this means for their planning is still TBD. And I think that it also means that they're going to have to not necessarily hold their fire right away after the Governor General speaks in the afternoon, but, they're going to have to stay on their toes to see what new or what else the Prime Minister brings in terms of framing or discussion around the issues.
Tim, I wonder if the Governor General, and I'd love to get your thoughts, factors into this at all, and not to say overriding all the things that you laid out, which I think everyone agrees. The situation is in a number of provinces really getting to a different point. A lot of people are concerned. The message today from Dr. Tam, for example, was a very sobering and serious one. But is there a bit of this that also has to do with you don't want the Governor General at this particular juncture to be the face of your government's message?
I'm shocked that there's gambling going on in this institution. Yes, there's obviously, look, I think it's, sorry about that, but I think it's, if you go back and look at speeches from the throne historically, obviously they've been read by the Governor General, and ultimately the news is dominated by kind of the themes in them, and the clips are a bit weird because you get the Governor General saying them. So obviously there is an advantage to putting the Prime Minister in front of some of those themes, because generally the speech from the throne doesn't include announceables. But I think to Marika's point, it'd be interesting to see whether there is one or two specific announceables that are pulled out and advanced by the Prime Minister, because obviously this is also the first shot in the discussion of whether we're having an election federally or not. I think people are kind of speculation has been reduced lately, but there's still a negotiation to be had about who's going to support what, when, are there votes going to be coming with that? And part of that obviously is a debate about where public opinion lands. And I think going out and speaking to Canadians about, the measures on healthcare, on help for people, and the long-term stimulus for an economy, I think are all things that will obviously positively frame, if they do it right, what the government is hoping to do, and make it tougher for opposition parties to say it's time for an election.
And we're going to talk in a second about the potential substance of the throne speech. Shakir, I'll just give you the last word on this subject. As far as the Governor General is concerned, do you think this has anything to do with what's going on there?
Yeah, I think to Tim's point, ultimately the Governor General herself is caught in some controversy. So it only makes sense to have the Prime Minister kind of echo some of the elements of the throne speech. Whatever 2 or 3 key announceables you can have those be clipped with the Prime Minister's face attached to it. But ultimately, I don't think you want an individual who's kind of wrapped up in some controversial reporting to be the face saying what you're going to do for Canadians to get them through this pandemic.
Hi, Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.